candidates to the beautiful campus of UBC. I now have the pleasure to introduce you to the man who will be our next Premier, John Rustad, who will unveil our party's platform, a common sense change for British Columbia.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to our candidates who have come out here and joined me here today as part of this. When we look at British Columbia, this is no better place, I think, to unveil our platform. Our completed platform with costing, of course. When you think about UBC, you think about our future. You think about the children. You think about the students. You think about how they want to be able to build a future. 1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving this province, and I think that is an utter failure by this current government. Youth should be able to look at this province with hope and optimism. Youth should be able to be thinking about planning their future as they come out of school, how they can make sure that they can provide the food that they need for their family, to make sure they put a roof over their head, and to get the jobs and the good paying wages that can be done.
Don't eat bugs. John's going to keep us from eating bugs.
And it's very, very clear.
Trials
and it's
for the bug-eating communists.
And it's very clear that the NDP absolutely love our platform and what we're trying to do.
Oh, conservatives! Oh, bug-eating communists!
You gotta love it, you know. Actually, as we've gone through this campaign, we've had very little bit of protests, and it's nice to see that the NDP have finally woken up a little bit as we approach the final days of the campaign. But speaking of the NDP, I have to admit, when I talk about what we're trying to do here for the youth here at UBC, but across this province, I do want to set the stage in terms of why there is such a difference between what we're proposing to do and what the NDP have been doing. And I think actions, quite frankly, speak far much louder than words, despite the loud voice that we may have had behind us here. David Eby has failed on many accounts here in British Columbia, and I just want to highlight a few things. Today, Sammy Doon was declared a terrorist organization by the federal government, and yet one of its leaders, Charlene Cates, has been charged. Charges have been brought forward by police, and this government has refused to prosecute, refused to move forward with this. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of why we are seeing so much disruption, so much hate, why we see mobs on the step of the art gallery burning the Canadian flag and saying death to Canadians. Along with that, when David Eby was a legal researcher, he actually penned a report, was part of a report that came forward that suggested that our laws around pedophiles was too strong, and actually argued the case for why they should be lessened. I just look at that and I think this is coming from the guy who wrote the handbook on how to be arrested and wrote the book on how to sue the police. Once again, when we look at what's going on in our streets, just with crime but also with drugs, David Eby actually had come out and said that he thinks it's perfectly fine for people who are collecting a welfare check to spend all of their welfare check on things like crack cocaine. I just find that incredibly offensive. But it speaks volumes, those actions speak volumes as to the problems we have today on our streets. With 1 in 2 youth thinking about leaving this province, it's not just about the economy and affordability, it's also about being safe. It's also about making sure that they see a positive future here in British Columbia. The budget that we're releasing today talks about a path forward. It talks about what we need to be able to do in this province, and talks about how we need to be able to overcome the 7 years of devastation that we've seen under the NDP. The sea of red ink that we have in this province and nothing to show for it. 7 years. Can anybody point to anything that is better in the province of British Columbia? I can't think of a single thing. We have crisis in our healthcare system. It's on the verge of collapse. The wait times are unbelievable. The fact that ER rooms are closing, people struggling to get something as simple as a family doctor. Health professionals that try to come into this province have to wait years to even have an opportunity to be able to help with the situation and work. Not to mention some of the other legislation that creates big problems. In education, we have seen decline in the results in British Columbia for reading, writing, and arithmetic. By all measures, BC's education system has been in decline. And to help hide that, David Eby got rid of letter grades, not so that people can't see just how their students are doing and performing, hiding the fact that this education system has been failing our students. And I also look at it just from the expense side. David Eby's plan going forward is to double the carbon tax. Double the carbon tax. By 2030, the average family will have paid almost $27,000 in carbon tax. How is that affordable for people that are struggling to put food on the table? And today, half the population is within $200 a month of not being able to put food on the table and not being able to pay their rent. He refuses, quite frankly, to give people the care that they need when it comes to services. Tent cities have popped up all over the province. They've never used to be like this. The crime, the drugs. It was just 2 months ago, my wife was in downtown Prince George and she was walking to a dentist appointment, and there was a lady who was passed out in a flower pot with her feet up in the air. And checked, she was still breathing, she was okay. But this is what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, even in places like Prince George and throughout the province. This is not right. This should not be normal. Yet this is what David Eby has created in British Columbia. So when I think about what we're trying to do for the last, whatever it's now been, 22 days of the campaign, we have rolled out day after day pieces of our platform. 200 pages of platform that you will see that is on our website, conservativebc.ca, which talks about all the positive things that we need to do in British Columbia, how we need to make sure we provide tax relief for people in this province, how we need to make sure that we get our economy going. David Eby, with a deficit of $9 billion currently and projected to go much higher, has really bankrupted our future. He has had zero focus on the economy. Many of the things that we're talked about in our platform are just that. How do we get our economy going in British Columbia? How do we make sure that we can afford the services that we have, that we want to do? Just a 0.1% increase in GDP would add $400 million into our budget. If we could get an extra 2% on our GDP, that would almost be enough just to take care of the deficit alone, which is why we're so focused on it. We need to get our minds open. We need to get the feet underneath our forest sector. We need to take advantage of the resources that we have. We need to get government out of the way so that our housing can get built in this province. We need to get government out of the way so that people can invest in businesses, and most importantly, that they can pay higher wages. Because if we want to have a future for our children, if we want them to be able to stay in this province, we need to address the core reason of why they're thinking of leaving. They need to be able to have hope and optimism for a future. They need to be able to afford to live in this province and to raise a family. That is what this platform has been all about, is about making sure that those people, our youth in this province, can stay, that families can be able to build that future. And the only way to do that is through tax relief. What we have put into the budget here is $3 billion annually of tax relief once it's fully implemented, $1.5 billion in the first year, ramping up as it goes from there in terms of the tax relief that needs to be done for people in this province. Whether you're a homeowner or whether you're renting, the Rustad rebate will take a significant step to be able to reduce those costs for people. Getting rid of the carbon tax, not just the $1,200 per household that'll put back in people's pockets on an annual basis, but taking those hidden costs out of everything, whether it's the food that we eat, whether it's the clothes that we buy, whether it is any sort of components that we have in our society. It is all part of that carbon tax that is costing us as a society. So all of this is the changes that we need to do around this. What you also see in our budget will be an increase in spending of just over $1.1 billion annually going forward. We've actually only put 2 years worth of costing into the budget, because one of the things that is extremely difficult to look at is actually what is the NDP actually spending money on. They've got $4 billion just in contingencies that they can't even explain where that money goes. Even things like Clean BC, for example, are hidden in there without a line item, even though they tout it as being a significant program. There's so much that's going on that needs to be looked at and repaired in British Columbia. So I guess just in closing, I would say this. The strategic investments that we are going to make, both the capital investments as well as the operating investments, are specifically designed to address these many problems that David Eby has created in British Columbia. The tax relief that we're putting in place is to help with affordability. The plan we have put in place around housing will create stability and create rental units and help to stabilize that market and bring some of those costs down for people. And the most important thing, to get our economy going so that we aren't burdening the future with additional credit card debt like the NDP are doing, but that we have that sound fiscal management that's needed to get us back to a balanced budget within 2 years and to make sure that our economy can meet the needs of people in this province. So I'm very pleased to present to you the platform that we have, and I'm very pleased to say that under a Conservative government, common sense change will be the approach that we take in British Columbia. Enough of a province that's run by ideology, that's run by the NDP. We need to get back to a province that is going to be sound fiscal management, but most importantly, that's going to put people first. Make sure that we put patients first, make sure that we put youth first, make sure that this province is a place that people can once again be proud to be called British Columbians. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you. We're going to start with Andrea McPherson with Global. One question.